Okay, it's 2 o'clock, and welcome to our virtual education sessions for our Delaware Diabetes Coalition Wellness Expo. We obviously couldn't be in person. We're supposed to be at Deltec next Tuesday. That is postponed to April 27th, 2021 at Deltec in Dover. So if you want to mark your calendar for that. And I'd be remiss if we didn't thank our sponsors, the state, the Delaware Health and Service Center, for their support. And over on the right is the chat. Feel free to put some chat in there where you're from, if you have type 1, type 2, and any kind of comments. But if you do have a question, please put it down in the bottom in the Q&A box. And at the end, I will come back on and go over those with Nicole. And now I'm happy to have Nicole Fulmer here from Delaware Hospice and Honoring Choices. And she's going to present to us about the importance of advance directives and post-care and all that good stuff. Nicole, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm really, really happy to be here today. And there's a special reason that today is so special. I'm going to actually share partway through my presentation. I do want to point out right before I start that I have 3 children, 2 of which are virtual, and 6 animals in the house, including a dog who barks at the Amazon truck. So I apologize in advance if you may hear that at some point. But this is the life we live right now in the COVID world. So like Sarah said, I'm going to be talking to you today about end-of-life planning. And just flip this slide here real quick. Going to talk a little bit about what an advance directive is, and then how to define and document and share with other people what it is. And the way I break this out is I like to talk about the 4 W's and an H. If you think back to elementary school, when we had to like cut out articles in the newspaper and talk about like the who, what, why, when, and how. And it's kind of like that for advanced care planning. And I think it's an easy way to break it down and to understand. Because for some people, talking about end of life can be something that's very difficult. So first, we're going to see if we can do a poll. And let me see, I may even be able to launch this poll. Let's see, we're going to try something new here. All right, hopefully you will see this show up on your screen. The question being, what is your level of understanding of end-of-life planning? And if you see this, if you could just click on, Sarah, I don't know if I know you're muted. Is it possible to unmute and just let me know, do you see that?
Yes, it's there.
Oh,
And
perfect.
go ahead. Sorry, that question didn't finish.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. But basically, I just wanted to know, what people thought. If they're a newbie, they have a little bit of language, a solid understanding, or hey, you could present this session instead of me. So it looks like 83% of you have finished. I love doing these polls. It's fun. And I'm going to just share the results. So it looks like we are kind of like in the middle there. So we have a couple people who are familiar with it, someone brand new to it, and then someone who has a really good understanding. All right, let me stop that. Thanks, everybody. I'm glad we got that to work, Sarah, something new. That just helps me as I am presenting things, gives me an understanding of how deep to go or to just kind of gloss over things. So we'll start out with what is end-of-life planning, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Really, it's about thinking of end of life and what it is that you want, to make sure that your goals and your choices are honored at the end of life. And it's really a gift to those who you leave behind, so they never really need to worry, did I do what mom or dad or my sister or my brother really wanted in life? You have an opportunity to actually document these wishes in an advance directive. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Some people think you need a lawyer. Some people think you need to notarize it. And fortunately for us in the state of Delaware, we don't need to actually worry about that. But again, I'll get into that. And also, somebody's calling me. Let me just turn that off. I apologize. Again, the fun part of being virtual. One of the most important parts parts in end-of-life planning is the ability to choose someone who can speak on your behalf. And we call this a healthcare advocate or a healthcare proxy. I'll get into that in just a moment. So we'll start about who should have an advance directive. And really, as soon as you turn 18 years of age, you can have an advance directive. Some people think it's only, what happens when you're in your 60s or your 70s, but really, when you're 18 and you can go off to war, you can have an advance directive. It can be modified any time throughout your life, and that is something that I think is wonderful, because as we get older, as circumstances change, we can change it. And a good way to think about this, I just basically call it the 5Ds. Every 10 years, you want to look at this type of document. If you're diagnosed with perhaps cancer or Alzheimer's, you might want to look at this. If you've been divorced and you have someone listed, perhaps your spouse, who is going to make those decisions for you at the end of life, might be a good chance or a good opportunity to change that if you don't want them to speak for you. Also, if your healthcare agent has passed away, of course, you want to name someone else. And for some people, obviously not during COVID, if you were traveling, this is a time a lot of people think, well, you know what, maybe I should change or look at this right now. The picture that I have here on the right is a woman I work with and her young family. And her son, the young man there, found out he had colon cancer right before he went off to college. Unfortunately, he died when he was 22. And Darlene did not have an opportunity to talk with her son about what his wishes were. And she thinks even to this day, she's like, did I do the right thing for him? And she says in retrospect, she really wishes she had had the courage to talk to him about what he wanted. So I just, I bring this up to share that, again, it's really never too early to have these conversations. I have a son in college, and, I talked to him about this. I also have a little boy who's 10 years old. He has already told me which songs he wants played at his funeral. And he looked at me and he's like, Mommy, only one of them has a bad word. But to him, he said, Mommy, I know this is important, so I want you to know this for me. So now we'll turn to the why that you want to think about what you want at end of life and completing an advance directive. And there's several benefits here that I've outlined. It increases your chances that what you want will be honored at the end of life. And I'll say, for example, if you don't specify that you want to be resuscitated, the doctors and your medical team will do everything in their power to make sure that they try to use CPR to bring you back, to start your heart again. And for some people, that can be very scary, and they don't want that to happen. I actually met a gentleman who tattooed DNR across his chest because he did not want that. So people will go to some extreme lengths for that. This next bullet point is very important. It helps give you a sense of control. When COVID really first was prevalent in the early spring, we heard a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, you've got to do your advance directive. It gave them a little bit of control. So they knew that hopefully what they put down would be honored. We had people actually call us at Delaware Hospice and say, you know what? I'm older and I said I didn't want a breathing, or I did want a breathing tube. But you know what, with COVID, give it to someone else. I want to change my advance directive so that someone younger and healthier has a chance to survive. So it really had a profound effect on people, but gave them a sense of control for what they wanted in life. As much as people think it's difficult to have these conversations with family members and friends, and sometimes it is, I'm not going to lie, I have seen it happen that it actually can bring families closer together. It's a beautiful thing. I talk to many families, some individually and doing an advance directive, and then also sharing that information with someone else who may or may not be as open to it. Kind of like a mediation, if you will. And it's definitely an honor to be able to be part of those conversations. For people that want particular care or maybe don't want some extraordinary medical care. Again, very important to them. And in a way, they feel like this is a gift and it relieves the burden on their loved ones. So I'm just going to take a moment here and share a personal story with you. These two pictures were taken several years ago. My husband, Will, Antonio, who's now in college, and then our two little ones who we adopted. This was our first family vacation. And I wanted to share this with you. Today actually marks a very important day. Today is 5 years since my husband, Will, died. We call it his angelversary, the day he got his angel wings. My husband had type 2 diabetes. He didn't like to go to the doctor. He didn't like to check his sugar. He thought, I'm 43, what could happen? Well, I'll tell you what happened. 5 years ago today, he went to work and he had a massive heart attack and he died in the bathroom at work. Looking back, I see commercials about diabetes and that there's an increased chance of having a heart attack. I probably saw those before, but really never paid attention. But I can tell you now, I pay attention. And when Sarah reached out to me and asked if I would do this, I said, of course, especially with anything related to heart disease or diabetes, because for my husband, it just means more. And then when she said the date, I smiled. And, she said, oh, maybe it's okay if you don't want to. And this gives me chills because you know what? This is the perfect day to give this presentation because I think, if I can share a story with others and, make sure that you or your loved ones make sure that you're doing everything you can for your health or for others, it is so incredibly important. And while you're doing that, to also talk to your family about what it is that you want. I was very fortunate that my husband did share with me that he was an organ donor. He wanted to give all of his organs except his corneas. He was very particular about that. I also knew he wanted to be cremated and he did not want to be buried. He also did not want to be put in an urn with pretty flowers. So again, things that we had talked about just in passing. This is before I had this job. And, when he died, I knew what he wanted. Unfortunately, he never shared with his family. And this completely fractured our family. A family that had welcomed me and my family, but after he died, his same family blamed me for his death. Why didn't I make him check his sugars? Why didn't I force him to go to the doctors? Well, if there's any men in your life or you're a man, sometimes it's hard to tell somebody else what to do, especially a middle-aged man. Well, I carried on and I did what my husband wanted and I followed his wishes. And unfortunately, the family didn't speak to us. I found out on Facebook Saturday that his mother died last week. They didn't even call to tell me the grandmother of their 3 children had passed away. I don't want this to happen to any other families. So if you take away anything from today, even if you don't complete an advance directive, just let your family, let your friends know what you want. Because believe me, it can really change many lives moving forward. I want to talk now about when to complete an advance directive. And this writing on this picture is a little difficult to read, so I'm just going to read it out loud. We'll spend years and tens of thousands of dollars planning a wedding, and only half of marriages last. But we won't spend any time talking about our end-of-life wishes, and we know that lasts. Think about it. How many weddings have you been to when all of this money is spent? But there's 2 things we know in life, like Ben Franklin said, that are inevitable: taxes and death. And so it is, in a lot of cultures, including ours, a little taboo to talk about these things. But I assure you that once you do talk about this, it becomes easier. And it really can make an incredible difference at the end of someone's life. The other 2 things, the bullet points here, It's important to start talking and thinking about these things when you are healthy, when you are of sound mind. I've worked with families that have dementia and Alzheimer's, and it can be a little bit more difficult then. Definitely still doable, but again, a little bit difficult, and not in a crisis situation. And again, I spoke earlier about the pandemic, and unfortunately, there were families having conversations over the phone when they were in the hospital, or trying to tell a nurse, this is what I want, please let my family know, these are my wishes. So again, just to try to do this when you are healthy and not in a crisis. And this Chinese proverb is I think summarizes it so well. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So I know it can be one of those things, oh, I'll get to it, I'll get to it. You know what? There's no better time than the present. This isn't something that you have to go to a lawyer for or get notarized. This is something that you can use a form online, or you can simply just grab a piece of paper and jot a few things down, and that will suffice in most situations. So now I'm going to turn to the how about completing an advance directive. And if you've ever looked at it in Delaware, they vary state to state. Unfortunately, they haven't gotten a nationwide one done yet. But the one that was created in Delaware, honestly, and this is just my personal opinion, you need a master's degree, maybe 2 master's degrees to understand it. It was written by elder care lawyers, and it is definitely not user friendly. They say that when you write something like this, it should be written at like maybe a 6th grade reading level, because this is very difficult for a lot of people, and it can be very confusing. But what I do and others at Delaware Hospice, and we do this totally for free, we're a nonprofit, we break it down into these 3 sections. So the first section, and probably the most important, is your healthcare power of attorney. Who is the person you want to speak for you? The second is the decisions regarding your end of life, and we'll talk about those because some you may be familiar with and some you may not. And then the third part is where we would get into whether or not you want to be an organ donor. And there's even different components in this particular section. And I have a funny story to share too. So the first part, choosing who your healthcare agent should be. So you want someone who can accept this role, someone who could be good in a crisis. Even though they may not agree with you, they will follow through with what you have asked them to do. This does not need to be a family member. It does not need to be a spouse or a partner or a child or a parent. It could be a good friend. It could be your pastor. It could be a lawyer that you've trusted in. Anyone you feel comfortable, and someone who will accept it for you. I've spoken with people who say, I would love to name my spouse, but there's no way that she's going to be able to handle this. So I'm going to name a dear friend instead. So that option is there. But again, you just want to have someone who can follow through what you want and can be there to listen about what is most important to you. This is a great quote by Walt Disney's brother, Roy. It's not hard to make decisions once you know what your values are. So some people become very, very overwhelmed. I mean, it's hard to talk about end of life to begin with, but then, well, what do I want? But really think of think of your core values. What is most important to you? Perhaps family, perhaps religion. Are those important to you? Maybe you don't want to be in any pain. Maybe you want comfort care. Maybe you want pictures of your family around you. Maybe you want Darius Rucker music playing, whatever the case may be. But you think about, what is it that makes me smile? What is it that is important to me? And those simple questions can really help guide what you put in your advance directive. So for example, I break this down into 3 components. So there are the medical treatment options, some preferences, and then care locations. So in the first column for the treatment options, this is something a lot of us will think about. CPR, do I want chemo or don't I want chemo? Do I want to have an IV? And this can change at different stages in a person's life. So perhaps someone who is, young and has been diagnosed with, breast cancer at a very early stage, they may want to do chemotherapy and they're fine with CPR, but someone who maybe is in their 90s may not. I've seen it happen both ways. So again, it is completely up to the individual what they want. And I always encourage people to talk with their doctor about this, particularly about things they may not be as familiar with. Doctors are a wonderful source of knowledge there. Now, when it comes to other preferences, non-medical, I've listed some there. It could be music to make sure that your lips are moist. This next one I love, the sheets untucked. I spoke to a woman once and she told me, I needed to write this down in her advance directive, that she did not want the sheets tucked in at all when she was dying. Just did not want it happen, whether she was in a coma or not. Ever since she was a child, she hated it. She needed her feet to feel free. So that was something that was incredibly important to her. Other people, like I'll give you an example, my grandmother, she told me, whatever happens to me, Nicole, you make sure my nails look good. That was incredibly important to her. And for others, the location of where they want to be. Some people prefer to be at home. Others may not want to. They may not want those memories. So they may want to be in a hospital or at a place like a hospice facility where it's a place specifically designed for people who need that extra layer of support for them and for their family. So the third section I talked to you about was organ donation. So here's a picture of my husband shortly before he died. And I mentioned earlier that Will did not want his remains, his cremains, in an urn with pretty flowers. Well, Will loved his Harley Davidson motorcycle, I think sometimes more than life itself. And when he was on there, he felt free. So after he died and I had him cremated, I went to the Harley dealer where he spent way too much money, in my opinion, and asked, do you have an urn? And they said no. And they were actually kind of surprised. They're like, we haven't had that request. And I said, do you have anything at all that I could use? And the guy behind the counter, who actually knew my husband, said, well, we've got a Harley Davidson gas tank, but it has a couple of dents in it. Like, perfect. He had a couple dents in him too. So I think it's awesome that, we did this. My son built this kind of stand for it. Also, the picture there of the compass was a tattoo that was on his shoulder, and the replica of his little Harley Davidson. When I look at this, it makes me happy because I know that I was able to follow what he wanted. I can tell you his mother was mortified when she found out, but again, I did what I thought was best for my husband and for my kids. Also, just one last thing about organ donation. A lot of people think with organ donation that it's really, heart, lungs, kidneys, but in reality, there is so much more. Even though my husband died and they were not able to save him, he has still helped 69 people through the gift of life. Now, much of this is bone and tissue and skin, and I had really never thought of that. Of course, they couldn't use his heart or his kidney or his lungs, but through the gift of, again, tissue, skin, and bone, he was able to help these people, and he will continue to do so for another 5 years, which to me is remarkable that it can last for 10 years. And I will share with you, and if there's anyone on here who's a Harley Davidson type of guy, Gift of Life not only does life-saving techniques, but they also do what they call life-enhancing. And they told me that this would be very difficult for a young widow. And I remember hearing that the day he died, like, oh my God, like I'm a widow. And they said that they can take skin from his back and use it for breast reconstruction. I actually laughed when I heard that. I remember driving home from the hospital to tell my 3 kids that Daddy had died and wasn't coming home. And I'm like, you know what? He'd love that. He could be on a boob. What man wouldn't? And it's known as the boob story in my family, and even a gift of life. They'll call me up and say, "Hey, Nicole, can you share this story? We have a bunch of physicians and it's going to be a little dry. Maybe you could share that." And it's just something that makes me laugh, and something that honestly, I think he would get a kick out of. And my mother is a breast cancer survivor. I think that she would enjoy that as well. All right. We're actually doing great on time. We're wrapping up here. So, who should have a copy of your advance directive after you complete one? And this is a sample of what it looks like for the state of Delaware. Obviously, you want to make sure that the person you've chosen to be your healthcare agent, that you make sure they have a copy. Family, any close friends, you can make sure they have a copy. If you have specialists or your physician, if you're going to the hospital, they usually ask you if you have one. Always a good idea to bring it along with you, so there's no question as to what you want. And then if you have a good relationship with a financial planner or a lawyer, some people also like to consider giving a copy to them as well. Now, this next slide, I like to share with people because a lot of times I get questions, Nicole, this is great. I did this. My spouse is my healthcare agent, but how on earth do I tell my children this? This is going to freak them out. They don't want to know about this. And I remind them, I said, this is a gift. And I love this picture because it's, how do you break the ice? And it's snow and a little girl giving a gift to a snowman. It can be a beautiful gift. And here are just some conversation starters. You can say, hey, I was on a session from the Delaware Diabetes Coalition, and, we had this talk about end of life planning, and it really got me thinking. Or, you know what, I'm healthy now and I'm strong, but I have been thinking a little bit about the future. Could we chat? Or, did you hear about, the lady down the street? She passed away. I don't think her family has any idea what to do. So again, it can be as simple as this. And I always tell people, if at first you don't succeed, try again. The holidays are coming, and for some people, this could be an opportunity to bring it up. I know the holidays will look a lot different. Some of us might be virtual and on Zoom calls instead of around the dinner table or around a tree or a menorah. But there are also times when we think of family and our loved ones. So again, it could be an opportunity to bring it up. And just in closing, just to let everyone know that at Delaware Hospice and Honoring Choices Delaware, we're here to answer questions. Again, we are a nonprofit and we offer many, many different services, not only hospice, but also palliative care, which is basically another layer of support. If you have a serious illness, so perhaps you're going through cancer treatment, and you're in a lot of pain and you really need help managing that pain. With Delaware Palliative Services, you have a team that's in place that can assist you and work with your doctors to make sure everyone's on the same page, and not only take care of the patient, but the family as well, because, caregiving is a very difficult job. So we're always there for our caregivers. We also do a lot of grief support for adults as well as children. And then we also do help with end of life planning and advanced care planning. So we like to say we can help at any age and at any stage. So those are just a few things about our services. And even if you just have a question, we get them all the time and are always happy to answer. So I know I've just looked at the chat. I haven't seen any questions as of right now. But if anyone has any questions, feel free. I put this in here. We do lunch and learns every Thursday, just 20, 30 minutes. These are just some of the ones we have planned for the rest of the year. We do all different types. Some are around grief, some are about hospice or palliative care, some about children. So again, it's not just hospice, because that can scare people, but there are a lot of other services there. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen there. And, Sarah, I really want to thank you again. It gives me the chills again, to think about today And while it's a sad day in many respects, it's also one of remembrance. And, I always say if I get to talk to people and, just give them a thought, um, about something different, whether it's, especially for this group, making sure you're doing whatever it is you can to control, your diabetes and take care of yourself and exercise and go to the doctor, or to think about, what, maybe I should talk to my family about what I want at the end of life. And if I can just touch one person, it definitely makes everything, so much better.
Well, your presentation was wonderful, and I can tell from those lunch and learns your Zoom skills are fabulous. So
Oh,
thank you. You've
thank
honed them
you.
well. um,
Thank you.
but no, I really appreciated hearing that, and this isn't a typical conversation or topic that we would have at our sessions, so it's good to hear a
Mhm.
different topic. And let me see. So this is my mom, Nina. She's the president of the coalition.
Hello, Mom. Hello,
And
Mom.
she just brought me. Do you know this 5 wishes
Yes,
Arthur?
yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Definitely. So there are many organizations out there that help people in doing their advance directive, and Five Wishes is a wonderful one. I know Christiana has been using that for a long time, and it's just a very easy to digest way of doing this. And it's broken out into your 5 wishes, what it is that you want. And there's others out there, Conversations Project and many, and we work with all of them in helping people to, really help them understand and decide what they want, because it can be a very overwhelming topic. It really can.
Yeah, most definitely. I was stating earlier. You talked about the age that you should do this.
Yeah,
I have an advance directive and a will, and I think that anyone
that's fabulous.
who has, yeah, it's a just do it.
Yeah,
Just get it
yeah,
done.
and honestly, it is. It's a little bit of like introspection. It's not just, you don't just go through and check boxes. You're like, oh, I got to think about that.
Mhm.
What would I want? And it does change, over the course of your life. Again, when you're young and you're healthy, you think, oh, I'm inevitable. I can do anything. And then as you get older, then you're like, oh, well, maybe I don't know. And then
Yeah.
even in a pandemic, people are like, oh, do I want that? So it is, that was my cat that just ran across. If you don't know if you heard that, saw it out of the corner of my eye. I don't know what happened there. Thankfully, the dog hasn't barked yet. But definitely, it's something, once you do it, you feel a lot more comfortable. And by all means, don't hide it under the mattress. Don't stick it in, a safe deposit box. It's not going to do a lot of good. But just to share and to tell people what you want, because if you don't, the medical team will do whatever they deem necessary at the end of life. And for some people, particularly those that are a lot more fragile, they don't want that.
Right.
But again, completely up to each individual. Every single person is different. So kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, if anyone else has a question, you're welcome to put it in the Q&A or in the chat. But as Nicole posted her contact information, you can certainly reach out to her if you had any questions. And Nicole, we really appreciated this. And like I said, it's such an
Welcome.
off-topic topic for us. And so I definitely would love to chat with you about, coming to our in-person in April and talking about a
Sure.
different topic.
Happy to. Anything, I can do, whatever the topic is. We talk about so many different things. And a lot of people just aren't familiar with a lot of the services. And many of the things we do are completely free as a nonprofit.
And it's open to everyone, right? Like obviously there's no
Yes.
membership or anything like
Nope.
that. Everything is.
Open to every person in Delaware. We even have a program for children. It's hard to think, but we have a program called Katie Bug, which is a palliative and hospice program for children. So we work with the entire family in that, brothers, sisters, parents, and people can even graduate from hospice. We've had that happen at many different stages. Sometimes when people just get symptoms under control, we call it graduating, because they may go to a different type of program like a palliative. Um, but it's always good news when we can help them. And even if and when a person dies, to be able to be there, like our grief support, we by law we'll offer it for 13 months, but we really never say no. And even if you didn't come through hospice, you can still utilize the services. That's how I found out about it. After my husband died, my children went through Camp New Hope, and I was so moved by it. I became a volunteer, and then a job opened. And now I can say I'm honestly in my dream job because my husband died, which is so weird, to say. But again, like I said earlier, I'm just so happy that I have an opportunity to take, what, they say, make your mess your message, to take something that sucked, plain and simple, take that mess and then make it a message and help others.
Wow. Well, you've certainly done that, and you've done it well. As Cheryl commented over here, you've shared it very tenderly and with such compassion.
Oh, thank you very much, Cheryl. I appreciate it. And yeah, feel free. You can reach out to me or anyone at Delaware Hospice, or Sarah. She's got my information as well. And I wish you the best of luck and congratulations on pulling this off.
Thank you.
Nicole.
Yes.
It's Nina.
Yes.
I just
Hello,
want,
Nina.
you could probably be a really good speaker about living with a resistant person to diabetes as well. I think that
Oh, yes.
that's huge. That's a huge problem for families, is to deal with family members that are resistant to taking care of themselves. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just saying, I really love the way you introduced that aspect of your experience into this, because it's not just about diabetes, obviously, but that living with that person who is just totally clueless or unwilling or resistant to, or thinks they're immortal, and guess what? So I really appreciate you sharing your
of course.
That was great.
I remember, and I remember speaking to my doctor, and I was worried because I'm like, I don't think he's taking care of himself. I don't see him doing the sugars and writing in his journal. And she said, you know what? You control what you control. She asked me, who does the grocery shopping? I said, I do. She said, well, then you make sure you buy healthy food and you cook the food. You don't buy processed food. She said, you can't control if he goes into Burger King and orders a Big Mac is McDonald's, a quarter pounder or whatever, Whopper, because he would do that. But she said, control what you can control in your home. And I think that was really, really good. Just very good for him. And I remember my son, he was a smoker too. And one day my son went up to him when he was little and just said, Daddy, you need to stop smoking. I want you to be here. And, sometimes kids can be very powerful. My daughter, who's 12, God help me, she has no filter. She'd be a good speaker. She goes up to people on the streets who are speaking, is like, that's going to kill you. It killed my daddy. I'm like, oh my God, Alice and Elise. But you can encourage, let's go for a walk. You can encourage, hey, how's your sugar? I saw you had a beer earlier. It can be hard, and you live with a lot of guilt. When I got the text messages and I was told to my face that you could have prevented his death, it's hard to take. And, you just have to know in your heart, you can't change a person, but just do those little things and be supportive, because, diabetes is very difficult, and I tell my friends, I said, think of it as like cancer. If you had cancer or you broke your arm, you would get it fixed. You would get help. You would try what you could do. So,
And to that point, I think that you also have, as a partner or a spouse or a buddy or whatever you are, is the more you know about diabetes, the more you can be that partner versus the demon that's constantly nagging, and because if you don't know what you don't know, then you can't have a productive conversation. And so I'm a diabetes educator, so I deal with this every day. Yesterday we had a patient who was in the office, and he came in with absolutely nothing, no diary, no reader, no nothing. I said, and he was falling asleep in the office talking to me. And I said, did you drive? I said, did you drive here? And he's like, no, my wife did. I said, where is she? In the car. I went out to the car and got her.
And get her.
I brought her into the office, and she was like, what? She was sitting in the passenger seat. He most certainly did drive there. And Oh,
Oh, it can be infuriating, honestly.
busted for real. But I'm like, how do you drive I said to him, I walked back in the room, I said, how do you drive the car from the passenger side? And he didn't know what to say. I'm just
Oh
saying,
boy.
families, if we had, it was important to me to bring her into that conversation because
Very much.
it was, I don't know how much of what I said he heard because he was sleeping through half of it. So just saying.
It's so, so true.
Yeah.
So that actually, we got a question here.
Oh yeah.
How do you get someone to talk about the issue? Someone to talk about the issue with someone who had 2 gothic episodes of unconsciousness in 1 month. And then she said, I wish somebody could talk to my husband as well. He's pre-diabetic and overweight and 42. I tried to get him to join the Zooms today, but no go.
You can add my email. I'll talk to him.
Well, she can play it overnight it can be, what is that? White noise.
Subliminal. Yeah. Subliminal, like white
go
noise.
online and just play it in the room after he goes to
Yeah.
sleep.
And it looks like Katrina, I mean, my husband was 43 and we had never in a million years did I think he was going to die. Never. And he was overweight. He was a smoker, but so were plenty of other people. And hindsight's 2020. And here's the other thing. He didn't have life insurance. He couldn't get it. And so he died and we just about lost our house. And I always tell people, I'm like, you know what? If you're going to be selfish, at least do it for your family. Think of those who you're going to leave behind because they're the ones that are picking up the pieces. And, sometimes guilt, works. I mean, you try to be loving and supportive and encouraging. And sometimes it could be that he's just afraid. I think my husband was afraid. He didn't want to go to the doctor. He didn't want to get in trouble. Oh, next week I'll start that diet. Oh, after I finish that bottle of Captain Morgan, I'm not going to have any more, which I will be doing a shot of in 2 hours in his honor. But yeah, that's very hard. But sometimes I think, especially with men, they need to hear it from another man. It's just my personal experience.
Well, and just to add to kind of what Nina said for Katrina, if your husband is going to a doctor, if he'll let you go with him and let you go into the room and hear what the doctor is saying, and you can kind of become a team to combat this, then that could certainly help too.
Yeah.
She meant glycemic episode.
Glycemic, okay. Yep.
Was it a low blood sugar?
How do you get someone to talk about the issue of she had 2 glycemic episodes of unconsciousness? And
yeah, he must have had
a scary
mother, but
low blood sugar. Yeah. Well, in that case, it's a matter of knowing what to do for emergency treatment, and then, and because if you're there at the time, that's important. But then, the follow up to that is, why is he having so many low blood sugars in the course of 30 days? Is he not testing enough to know? Is he not getting good symptoms? Oh, it's sorry. Okay. Is she not getting good symptoms? That's what I'm saying. The more educated the family is about the dynamics of diabetes and everything that includes, whether it's the hypoglycemia or it's the, frequent urination, not getting enough sleep at nights, the fatigue. It's, those are all real things and real life experiences for somebody who's got uncontrolled diabetes, whether it's too low or too high. As educators, and providers, we say that the low blood sugars are far and away more deadly than the high blood sugars. And I'm not trying to minimize the catastrophic complications that come from the high blood sugars over time. But one low blood sugar can kill you, or you have a low blood sugar while you're driving and take out 10 other people. That is a real serious, extremely serious complication of diabetes and shouldn't be ignored. Maybe the provider doesn't even know if that's not been if they don't end up in the emergency room then, because of a hypoglycemic response,
took her off
event.
insulin. They took her off insulin to try and avoid these in the future.
Oh, wow.
Dialysis.
Oh boy. Okay.
That's scary.
I'm not going to go any further with that one.
Katrina, you're welcome to reach out to me. My email is director@diabetescoalition.org. I'll type it into the chat, and I can certainly connect you with other resources if you would like those. Diabetes. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. So thank you very much, Nicole. It was a great conversation here too. We appreciate your time and doing this on your husband's angelversary. I hope you enjoy the Captain and cake.
Yes, Captain Morgan and some chocolate cake. Yep.
There you go.
All right. Well, take care, everyone. I always sign off saying, stay healthy, wash your hands, social distance, wear your mask, please.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Check.
Yes, you got it. Delawareans are strong. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
And for those that are still on, I just to recap for the rest of the day, at 4:00 we have a session with